Welcome to the next framework in space. Today, we bring you a complete analysis of all the latest news from SpaceX. Get this, in just 7 days. We've had confirmation that Starship Flight 12 is practically on the launch pad. SpaceX has surpassed the incredible milestone of 600 Falcon 9 booster landings. We've seen leaks of an IPO valued at $1.75 trillion. And if that wasn't enough, the competition has had some, shall we say, rather dark days. But before we dive into all of this, I'd like to remind you that we have an epic challenge open in the community. We want to see which of you is the true oracle of the channel, and who can get closest to the exact date and time of the IFT-12 launch. The person who gets closest will take home a spectacular and fully personalized poster of the launch day with your username and the exact time you predicted the lift off. You have the link right below in the description to leave your predictions. Also, I want to let you know that our official channel website is now fully operational. Go check it out because it's looking great, and very soon we'll be adding a lot of new sections. On another note, this week we saw a full video on the channel about the history of the Starship Super Heavy program. But the breaking news is that SpaceX has just released its own documentary video, and it's very, very comprehensive with stunning visuals. I'll leave both links below in the description, both to our review, historical, and the official SpaceX documentary. But don't watch it until you finish this video. As a preview, I'll summarize in 3 main points what SpaceX covers in this new documentary. First, they offer us a deep dive into the leap towards Starship version 3v3, which, as the engineers themselves explain, is an almost clean sheet redesign. They have gathered all the lessons and problems from versions 1 and 2 to apply them all at once to this new foundational architecture, with the immense power of the new Star Factory building parts in series. This V3 is the true ship that will make reusability routine, perform in-orbit propellant transfers, and become the primary transport to the Moon and Mars. Secondly, the documentary fully immerses us in the tension of the control room and the pad tests, from exhausting 12-hour cryogenic propellant loadings to handling the new crown jewel, the Raptor 3 engine. This thruster has been astonishingly simplified, eliminating pipes and components, making it much more robust, so that in the near future, it operates with the same reliability as a commercial aircraft engine. SpaceX openly shows how they face difficulties, anomalies, and even explosions like the one that occurred at Massis, viewing every abort or failure as a success from which to extract vital data to prevent damage to the launch pad and to fly as soon as possible. Finally, the video conveys the project's brutal emotional and human toll. Workers describe how wild it is to build the most ambitious machine ever conceived and see it become a reality in record time. They recall how in just 5 attempts, they went from a first test flight to achieving the unprecedented feat of catching the booster with the giant chopsticks. The message they send to all industry skeptics is resounding. They are not breaking any laws of physics, they are merely pushing them to the limit, so that soon all of humanity will consider access to other planets as completely normal. That said, let's get down to business, because what you're about to see today is pure engineering history. We're going to start by talking about the true crown jewel, Starship. This week, Flight 12 has officially entered its final phase. Elon Musk has already hinted that a third-generation vehicle, V3, will be ready to fly in a few weeks, aiming for the first half of May 2026. And these are not empty words. Last week, we saw Ship 39 at the Massis facilities completing an impressive static fire. It was about 52 seconds of ignition, with all 6 engines roaring simultaneously. It's true, they didn't reach the full 60 seconds we've seen in other campaigns, but SpaceX engineers have confirmed that the data is excellent and validates the system. Look closely at the images. The sequence was textbook. In the afternoon, they began to chill the system. Then we saw that beautiful white frost line appear on the tanks, marking the liquid oxygen load, followed by methane, just before ignition. They activated the suppression system beneath the vehicle to displace air oxygen and prevent unwanted explosions. And suddenly, boom! Fire. Pure power for almost a minute. And I want you to appreciate the merit of this. This is the first successful static fire completed at Massis since that fateful day in June 2025, when Ship 36 decided to turn into stainless steel confetti and wiped out half the facility. In less than a year, SpaceX has not only rebuilt the site, but it's turned it into a bunker. They've installed concrete coverings for critical systems and erected massive containment berms. But here's the interesting part. Notice that this time they skipped a step. Normally, SpaceX performs a single-engine ignition test to simulate how it would ignite in the vacuum of space, what they call the in-space relight. This time, no trace of that test. Why? To me, this smells like they're simplifying Flight 12 as much as possible. Firstly, they might have decided to discard that in-space maneuver for this flight and focus solely on surviving the basic profile. The second scenario, which seems most likely to me knowing SpaceX, is that they want to leave all the complex stuff for Flight 13, which is where they would aim for a real, stable orbit, step by step, iteration by iteration. Let's talk about the heat shield, because the images we've received of Ship 39 returning to the production area are picture perfect. After vibrating for 52 seconds with the raw power of the Raptor 3S, which push much harder than their smaller siblings, not a single tile fell off. Zero. Nothing. The improvements to the attachment system are working. And here's the technical curiosity of the week. Elon Musk has revealed that beneath the tiles, they've placed an ablative layer, meaning a material that, if plasma manages to get through, vaporizes and absorbs heat, saving the ship's steel. Furthermore, internally at SpaceX, they've devised a way to seal the gaps between the tiles. They call it the crunch wrap, basically using a high-temperature ceramic paper to fill the gaps. Let's switch giants and move to Booster 19. What you see on screen is Starbase's Pad 2, the new one, which hasn't seen a real launch yet. As we saw last week, we had a static fire of about 5 seconds. Before Carlos tells you more, we ask you to subscribe to the channel. That's the best way to support us in creating more content. Thank you. Days after this ignition, we saw Mechazilla's arms, the famous chopsticks, lift Booster 19. I'll leave you with the images of the lower section. Look at those 33 pristine engines, not a loose cable or a sign of burns. But it's not all smooth sailing with the Raptor 3 engines. We're talking about beasts that generate 280 tons of thrust at sea level. All 33 together should provide over 9,200 tons of thrust, an absolute beast. But Elon Musk admitted that they didn't reach that figure in this test, and that's normal. In full-flow, staged combustion propulsion engineering, pushing pressures to 350 bar is playing with fire. They are literally facing an invisible and lethal enemy, cavitation. To put it simply, cavitation is like when a boat propeller spins so fast that it boils the water around it, creating bubbles. But in a rocket, these bubbles form in liquid oxygen at brutal pressures. And when they collapse, they explode with the force of microgrenades that eat away at the turbopump's titanium as if it were butter. It's a very serious problem they need to master to reach 300 tons of thrust per engine. And speaking of engines, a quick note. We mentioned last week that a gigantic white tent, the size of a starship's upper section, has been installed. This week, we saw it releasing cryogenic vapors at night. There are strong and quite well-founded rumors that they are testing the modified engines for the Starship HLS inside. This is the version that will land on the moon for NASA. You know those engines are at the top of the ship to avoid kicking up lunar dust upon landing? SpaceX isn't saying a peep, but the images don't lie. Let's take a quick tour of the infrastructure, because the construction speed is dizzying. First, we'll analyze Pad 2 at Starbase. It has proven to be a rock. They managed to fuel the entire booster in just 35 minutes during a wet dress rehearsal. The second key point is that, seeing the success of Pad 2, they are completely dismantling and rebuilding Pad 1. To make it equally robust, they are already driving sheet piles for the new flame trench. Finally, the third massive breakthrough is at the Star Factory. In Mega Bay 2, they are already stacking Ship 41 for Flight 14. They have a production park where they could assemble 24 vehicles simultaneously. And pay attention to this, it's very important. For logistics at the Sanchez site, gigantic U-shaped transport cradles have appeared. What for? To lay down the starships, put them on barges, and take them to Florida. Because in Florida, they're not wasting any time. The Gigabyte building on Roberts Road already has almost all its exterior cladding installed. And this isn't just for aesthetics. It's because hurricane season in Florida starts in a couple of months, and they need to protect the assembly lines. At Launch Complex 37, they already have all 9 segments of a new Mechazilla tower waiting to be stacked. And at the historic launch pad 39A, from where Apollo 11 took off, we've already seen liquid methane and oxygen flowing through the pipes of the new Starship tower. It's starting to look like what we had in Texas 6 months ago. And speaking of moving rockets from Texas to Florida, this week SpaceX brought a tear to the eyes of the most nostalgic among us. They have officially retired the drone ship Just Read the Instructions. This barge has supported 156 successful landings of Falcon 9 boosters in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's a floating legend, but now it's changing jobs. Kiko Danchev, VP of Launch, has confirmed they will use it to transport Starship vehicles horizontally from Texas to Cape Canaveral. The ship is 52 meters long, and the vessel has about 70 usable meters, so it fits like a glove. For the Super Heavy booster, which is much larger and heavier, they are preparing another gigantic vessel that the community has already christened You Will Thank Me Later. Let's leave the majestic Starship for a moment and turn to the workhorse, the undisputed king of the market, the Falcon 9. April 19, 2026 will be marked in the history books. SpaceX completed its 600th orbital landing. A decade ago, the idea of recovering an orbital rocket sounded like science fiction. They told you it was impossible, that you'd lose payload, that it was economically unfeasible. Today, SpaceX has landed 600 times, and as if that weren't enough, 3 days later, they launched another mission and marked the 602nd landing. This was with Starlink missions, of course, fleshing out that constellation, which already exceeds 10,200 active satellites. But the Falcon 9 mission that really has substance this week is for the GPS-38 satellite. Christened Heidi Lamar, a critical satellite for the United States Space Force. They launched it in the early morning, recovered the booster and fairings, everything perfect. But the interesting thing about this launch isn't the satellite itself, but why SpaceX launched it. And this is where competition and geopolitical drama come in. This national security mission was originally assigned to ULA's Vulcan rocket. But what happened? Earlier this year, the Vulcan had a very serious failure. One of its solid rocket boosters experienced a lateral burn-through, a hole in the nozzle from which fire started escaping sideways. The rocket was saved by the skin of its teeth, thanks to the main engines compensating for the trajectory. But the Space Force said, "This is as far as we go." Vulcan launches are halted until the outcome is investigated. The Pentagon has taken about 70 delayed missions that ULA had and dumped them onto SpaceX's plate. As of today, if the United States needs to put something critical into orbit, Falcon 9 is the only real, safe, and reliable option they have. And since we're talking about the Pentagon and money, hold on to your seats with this week's corporate news, because the scale at which SpaceX is operating is out of this world. First, they've just signed a $57 million contract with the Pentagon for a system called Link 182. It sounds like a 2000s punk band, but it's basically a classified space-to-space communications protocol. SpaceX will use its network of military satellites, which already number over 480, to communicate with each other using secure lasers and radio frequencies without having to go through a ground antenna. In a wartime environment, if you depend on a ground antenna, it can be destroyed. If your satellites communicate with each other in orbit, you are invulnerable. This is part of that gigantic missile shield everyone's talking about, the Golden Dome, which has an estimated budget of $185 billion. That's no small sum. But if those numbers seem large to you, listen to this. The document for SpaceX's imminent IPO has been leaked, and the initial valuation is estimated at $1.75 trillion. Trillions with a T in English, it's an astronomical figure. But the craziest thing in the document isn't the money. It's what they're going to do with it. Not content with revolutionizing rockets and telecommunications, SpaceX states in that document that they're going to start manufacturing their own AI chips. Yes, artificial intelligence chips, arguing that they don't want to depend on external suppliers in the long term. And they're going to invest billions in designing and manufacturing their own silicon, We don't know if it will be a variant of Tesla's chip or something entirely new. But they're partnering with Intel to manufacture them, and to top it all off, they've bought an artificial intelligence company called Cursor AI for a staggering $60 billion to boost the autonomous programming of their systems. They are integrating rocket manufacturing, global internet, military control, chip manufacturing, and artificial intelligence into a single entity. Do you understand the magnitude of this, by the way? A quick detail for those following the Starlink topic. They've requested permission for a new ground station in Texas, which they've named First of its name. It seems there's a Game of Thrones fan on SpaceX's licensing team. This station will have 40 enormous antennas, and it will operate on 4 different frequency bands simultaneously to offer Starlink users gigabit per second speeds, competing directly with terrestrial fiber optics, but from space. That's incredible. I'll leave all the links in the description and visit our website for more information. Before Carlos tells you more, we ask you to subscribe to the channel. That's the best way to support us in creating more content. Thank you. Now, while SpaceX plays galactic monopoly, we need to talk about its biggest theoretical rival, Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' company. And unfortunately, we bring bad news for them. Last Sunday, they launched the NG-3 mission of their brand new New Glenn rocket, and it was a disaster. During the second engine ignition of the second stage in space, one of the engines simply didn't provide the necessary thrust. The result was that they left their payload, the Bluebird 7 satellite, in too low an orbit. One of the engines simply didn't provide the necessary thrust. The result was that they left their payload, the Bluebird 7 satellite, which was a gigantic communications antenna the size of a tennis court, in too low an orbit. The size of a tennis court, in too low an orbit. Atmospheric drag slowed the satellite down. It ended up re-entering and disintegrating in a fireball over the Maldives. The FAA, the Aviation Authority, has classified this as a serious setback. And they have grounded the New Glenn rocket for at least 4 months while they investigate what happened. And this, guys, has a massive ripple effect throughout the entire aerospace market. Do you remember Amazon Kuiper? Amazon's internet satellite constellation, which wants to compete with Starlink? Well, Amazon depended on New Glenn to launch most of its 3,200 satellites. Right now, they have just over 200 in orbit, with their main rocket grounded due to critical failure, and European and ULA rockets unable to keep up. Amazon is desperate. Industry analysts estimate that Amazon will have to buy between 10 and 27 Falcon 9 launches per year from SpaceX to save its constellation. They estimate that Amazon will have to buy between 10 and 27 Falcon 9 launches per year from SpaceX to save its constellation. Between 10 and 27 Falcon 9 launches per year from SpaceX to save its constellation. So, to think of the irony of this, Jeff Bezos has to go knock on the door of Elon Musk, his biggest rival, to ask him please to launch his satellites on the Falcon 9, because his own rocket just burned up a satellite in the atmosphere. When the news broke, Musk simply tweeted, "Space is hard." Space is hard is a common industry phrase, but I read it as a subtle reminder that SpaceX launched 165 perfect rockets last year, while Blue Origin has only had 3 orbital flights. The gap between both companies right now is vast. And speaking of what's next, what can we expect from Starship's Flight 12, which is just around the corner? Firstly, it will be the real test for the Raptor 3 engines. It's one thing to fire them for 50 seconds while tethered to the ground en masse, and quite another to push thousands of tons into space, survive the brutal jolt of hot staging separation, and then reignite to land the second stage. A key point is that it will be the first launch from the new Pad 2. No matter how many water deluge tests they conduct, the actual liftoff unleashes acoustic and thermal energy that cannot be simulated on a computer. We'll see if the tower holds up as expected. Finally, the third key point will be to observe the mission objectives. Most likely, they will be looking for a clean ascent, a successful separation, and for the ship to survive re-entry with those new thermal patches on the leeward side. If they achieve all of this, Flight 13 will attempt to orbit Earth stably for the first time, which will be the ultimate and brutal test for the heat shield.
The week of April 19 ถึงเดือนมีนาคมที่2026 has made it clear to us that the future isn't something that's coming. It's something being welded, bolted and tested right now in Boca Chica, Florida, and in design offices. And now I pose the question to you. I want to read your thoughts in the comments.
Considering everything I've told you today, the sheer number of simultaneous projects, military contracts, artificial intelligence, if you had the money, would you buy SpaceX shares in that imminent IPO for 1.75 trillion? Or do you think they're taking on too much and the bubble might burst for them? Let me know in the comments below. I read all of them. Do you want more videos thoroughly analyzing these technical reports? Let me know with a good like. Don't forget to participate in the launch challenge. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss the next analysis. And I'll see you in the next video. Best regards, and until next time, Pioneer.